Can you imagine it? The most lavish party in Boston, where the elite gather to celebrate the birthday of a powerful boss, suddenly falls dead silent when the door opens? Horrifyingly, the person stepping in is not some celebrity or supermodel, but the poor, gaunt maid whom the hostess invited solely to publicly mock her in front of hundreds of disdainful eyes. Victoria Rossi smirks. "Look at this, everyone. This is my maid. Don't be shy. Feel free to take pictures." Everyone is waiting for her to tremble, to be humiliated, to hang her head and disappear in shame. But in that very moment, everything reverses. She walks forward, not like a victim, but like a true queen in the only old dress left from her buried past. And that very night, the most powerful man in the room, the one no one dares to look directly in the eye, falls into a fierce, burning, irredeemable love, with the very maid his wife intended to turn into a joke. Can this love overcome the vast chasm between rich and poor? Will the darkness of the underworld swallow her whole? Or will that very love redeem everything? Stay with us, because the story about to unfold will keep you glued to the screen. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. It was a crisp October morning in Boston, the kind where the autumn wind off the Charles River carried a sharp bite that slipped through even the thickest coats. Emily Harper stood outside the towering glass and steel luxury condominium in the Seaport District, one of the most exclusive addresses in the city, beside the gleaming black SUV that seemed to swallow the narrow side street whole. The building rose high above the harbor, its penthouse windows reflecting the pale sunrise like cold diamonds. Emily checked the time on her inexpensive phone, then wiped an invisible speck from the car's polished door with the cloth she always carried. It was not dirty, but she wiped it anyway, her hands steady despite the chill that numbed her thin fingers. She heard the sharp click of expensive heels behind her. "Are you blind?" Victoria Rossi's voice cut through the morning air like a winter gust. "Why is the car still here? I said we are leaving by 8. Emily turned quickly, her posture straight despite the exhaustion that pulled at her shoulders. "Good morning, ma'am." "Good morning for who?" Victoria snapped, adjusting her designer sunglasses even though the October sun was barely up and weak. She looked Emily up and down, her gaze lingering on the simple gray uniform that hung loosely on Emily's thin frame. "And what is that outfit? Do you only own one uniform in your life?" Emily glanced down at her clothes. They were clean, pressed neatly the night before in the tiny staff quarters, but worn from countless washes. "Ma'am, it is clean," she said softly, her voice polite and timid, the way it always was when speaking to someone so much older and more powerful. Victoria laughed in a mean, cutting way. "Clean does not mean decent. You people never understand the difference. Clean can still be embarrassing." Emily opened the back door for her without a word, her face calm, though inside something twisted, a quiet, gnawing ache that had become familiar over the years. Victoria entered the SUV and crossed her legs, the leather seat creaking softly under her. As Emily moved to the driver's seat, no, wait, in this version she was the maid, but in the new plot she drives sometimes? No, in the recreated she is maid. But to match original where driver drives, but user said maid. But in part 1, she is live-in maid. Perhaps she does some driving or waiting. To match, perhaps she is the household maid who also handles errands and sometimes drives. Victoria Rossi was rich, commanding, and proud. She liked being called ma'am. She liked when people depended on her because it made her feel important. Her family had long ties to Boston's construction and real estate world, ties that whispered of old connections, protection rackets quietly handled behind closed doors in the North End, favors traded in back rooms of Italian restaurants. Vincent Rossi, her husband, was the real power. Fair-skinned, handsome in a sharp, dangerous way, the head of what remained of a once mighty New England family, outwardly a successful developer with luxury projects dotting the skyline. But Vincent carried deep guilt, gnawing remorse for the things he had done to climb, the lives bent or broken along the way. He was emotionally deep, torn by violent inner conflicts, the need to protect his empire clashing with a buried desire for something cleaner, something real. Yet to the staff, he was distant, and Victoria was the one who ruled the household with sharp words. Emily worked for them as the live-in maid, cleaning the vast penthouse, cooking meals, running errands, whatever was needed. She lived in a small apartment on the lower staff floor with her 8-year-old daughter Mia, scraping by on her wages while sending what little extra she could to help her own ailing mother back in a rundown part of Roxbury. Most people in Boston's elite circles did not see Emily as a full person. They saw her as the maid. But if you watched her closely, you would notice something quiet about her strength. Her uniforms were always clean. Her shoes, though old, were polished. Even when her frame was thin from too many skipped meals to feed Mia first, she stood straight. And when she walked through the gleaming halls, she did not shuffle like someone beaten down by life. Her eyes were soft, but not weak. The problem was this: Emily worked for a woman who enjoyed putting people down. Victoria was loud about her wealth, her connections, the way her husband's family still held sway in certain shadows of the city. She owned stakes in luxury developments, decorated penthouses for the ultra-rich, hosted parties where Boston's powerful mingled. In her world, Emily was at the very bottom. That morning, Emily stood waiting, her breath visible in the cold October air. She had been up since 5, cleaning the already spotless kitchen, preparing breakfast, folding laundry. Her body ached from the previous day's work, her hands chapped from cleaning products, her stomach empty since dinner the night before, a simple peanut butter sandwich shared with Mia. Poverty clung to her like the damp Boston fog, the constant worry about Mia's school fees, the overdue electric bill back in the staff quarters, the way she rationed food, going to bed hungry so her daughter could have seconds. Nights were cold in the unheated lower floor, the wind whistling through old windows, and Emily often lay awake, thin blanket pulled tight, listening to Mia's breathing, her heart heavy with fear for the future. Vincent emerged then, tall and imposing in a tailored coat, his fair skin flushed from the chill. He nodded briefly at Emily, barely acknowledging her, as he slid into the back seat beside Victoria. But in that glance, something flickered in his eyes, a momentary remorse, perhaps, for the way his wife spoke, or deeper guilt for the life he led. He carried consuming remorse for past choices, deals that had hurt innocent people, rivals intimidated in tense street confrontations where words turned to threats, standoffs in dark alleys near the harbor where his men faced off against encroaching crews from New York families pushing into Boston territory. Those confrontations were bold, unexpected. Cars pulling up suddenly, heated words exchanged, tension thick but rarely exploding into more, as Vincent preferred control. Yet each one tore at him inside, a violent emotional conflict between the power he wielded and the man he sometimes wished he could be. As Emily closed the door and returned to the building, her job today was inside, cleaning while they were out. She felt the familiar numbness creep in. Confusion, fear, guarded curiosity about the world above her. Why did some have so much while she had so little? The unfairness was absurd. One missed shift could mean eviction from even the staff quarters. One illness for Mia could wipe out savings that did not exist. She had endured cold nights walking home late from extra cleaning gigs in Roxbury, wind cutting through her thin coat, malnourished and sleep-deprived, yet always polite, always resilient. Inside the penthouse, as she dusted the marble counters, Emily's inner turmoil grew intense. Suspicion of the Rossi's world, the whispers of business meetings that sounded like something darker, mixed with anxiety about her own life. She was desperate, powerless, yet something strong held inside her. Horror at how close she was to losing everything. Shock at the stark gap. Their endless wealth, private chefs on call, heated floors, while she counted pennies for Mia's lunch. Victoria, on the phone in the car, laughed loudly. Yes, this meeting must go well. My client is important. Important people don't tolerate delays. She paused, glancing at the empty driver's seat. Today, a separate driver handled it. But her words carried the same disdain. Vincent sat silent, his jaw tight, remorse gnawing as he thought of the latest confrontation. A rival crew blocked a development site, tense standoff in a South Boston street, words sharp, threats veiled, his men ready but held back. He hated the fear he inspired, yet needed it. Deep inside, a surge of something unnamed stirred when he thought of the quiet maid, her dignity amid humiliation, touching a place he kept buried. Emily, alone in the vast penthouse, paused by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. The view was breathtaking, but it only heightened her disorientation, the dizziness of being so close to opulence, yet so far. Pain shot through her heart, for Mia, for the unfair nights, for the poverty that humiliated her daily. Yet in quiet moments, condensed emotional stillness settled. She would endure, for her daughter, for herself. But the turmoil intensified. Fearful of what tomorrow might bring, an unexpected bill, a cut in hours, Victoria's next cruel word. Guarded curiosity about the Rossi's life, the power, the protection. And deep down, a tiny, confusing spark of hope that one day things might change. Little did she know how soon they would. The following week, the October wind grew sharper, rattling the high windows of the Seaport penthouse like it wanted to get inside and see how the other half lived. Emily Harper moved through the vast rooms with the same quiet care, dusting shelves that held crystal decanters worth more than a year's wages, polishing marble floors that reflected the harbor lights like black mirrors. Her body felt heavier each day, thin shoulders aching from carrying laundry baskets up and down the service elevator, stomach hollow from another skipped lunch so Mia could have the last yogurt cup in the tiny staff refrigerator. Nights in the lower floor apartment were colder now. The building's heat barely reached the staff quarters, and Emily often woke shivering, pulling the single worn blanket tighter around herself and her sleeping daughter. Victoria Rossi had been in a particularly sharp mood all morning. A development deal in the North End had hit a snag. Rumors of a rival New York family pushing into Boston territory, trying to muscle in on construction contracts. Vincent had left early, his face tight with that familiar storm behind his eyes. Emily had overheard fragments on the intercom, a tense meeting scheduled in a South Boston warehouse, voices low and urgent. She knew better than to listen too long, but the words lingered, threats veiled as business talk, the kind of confrontation that happened in shadowed alleys or empty lots near the harbor. Vincent's world was one of power and control, but it came with gnawing remorse that ate at him in quiet moments. He hated the fear he inspired, yet he wielded it like a weapon, torn by violent inner conflict between the empire he had built and the cleaner life he sometimes imagined in fleeting, impossible dreams. That afternoon, Victoria decided to shop. She summoned Emily with a snap of her fingers. "You're coming with me. I need someone to carry bags." Emily nodded softly. "Yes, ma'am." Her voice was timid, polite, the way it always was when addressing someone so much older and more powerful. Inside, confusion and guarded curiosity stirred. Why her? Usually a separate driver handled errands, but she followed without question, powerless against the unreasonable demand. They drove to Newbury Street, the heart of Boston's luxury shopping, where brownstones housed boutiques with names Emily could barely pronounce. The SUV pulled up smoothly, and Victoria stepped out first, designer coats swirling in the wind. Emily followed behind, carrying an empty leather tote for purchases, her own thin jacket doing little against the chill. Victoria walked fast, heels clicking on the brick sidewalk, greeting shop assistants by name. Inside the first boutique, warm lights glowed on racks of cashmere sweaters and silk dresses that cost more than Emily earned in months. Victoria tried on outfits, turning in front of mirrors, laughing loudly with the saleswomen. Emily stood near the door, holding discarded shopping bags that grew heavier with each store. Her arms ached, legs numb from standing, but she kept her face calm. Poverty's humiliation pressed in. The way the assistants glanced at her worn shoes, the way Victoria waved her hand dismissively when asked if the help needed anything. Emily's stomach twisted with quiet horror. How absurdly unfair that one woman could spend thousands without blinking, while another counted quarters for bus fare. At a cafe between shops, Victoria met two close associates, Carla, sharp-eyed and loyal, and Marco, broad-shouldered and quiet, both part of Vincent's inner circle. They sat at an outdoor table despite the cold, sipping expensive lattes under heat lamps. Emily stood a few steps away, holding the growing pile of bags, wind cutting through her jacket. She watched the harbor in the distance, disoriented by the contrast, their laughter warm and easy, her own body shivering, malnourished and sleep-deprived from nights worrying about Mia's upcoming doctor visit she could not afford. Victoria's voice carried over the wind. Vincent's birthday is next month. The gala has to be perfect. Rooftop at the new Harbor Tower, the one overlooking the water. Everyone important will be there. Carla leaned in. Bigger than last year? Victoria smiled proudly. Much bigger. People need to feel it. Marco chuckled. Only the best, right? Victoria touched her chest dramatically. Exactly. Then Victoria glanced back at Emily, still standing with the bags, face pale from the cold. Her eyes lit with that familiar planning gleam, the one that meant something cruel was coming. She lowered her voice, but not enough. You know what would be funny this year? Something to really make people talk. Carla raised an eyebrow. What? Victoria nodded toward Emily, inviting her. The maid. Marco's mouth opened slightly. The quiet one with the kid? Victoria laughed softly. Yes. Imagine her in that big rooftop hall, surrounded by all our guests, senators, developers, celebrities. Stanton there lost, holding a glass like she doesn't belong. Carla covered her smile. That's cold. Victoria shrugged. It'll be entertaining. Let her see real luxury. Maybe it'll teach her where she stands. Marco shook his head, amused. She'll probably wear her uniform. Victoria's eyes shone. Even better, we'll watch her squirm. When she looks uncomfortable, I'll just smile and say, "Don't worry, she's my maid." Emily stood frozen, bags heavy in her arms, every word landing like a stone. Shock rippled through her, dizziness, numbness spreading from her chest. Why such cruelty? The unfairness was absurd, violent in its casualness. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back, face still calm. Inside, turmoil tore deeper. Horror at the public humiliation planned, anxiety about facing that world, fear for how it might affect Mia if word spread. Yet beneath it, a guarded curiosity flickered. What would it feel like to step into that light, even as a joke? Victoria turned suddenly. Emily. Emily stepped forward quickly, voice soft. Yes, ma'am. Victoria smiled like a cat. My husband's birthday gala is next month. You're invited. The associates froze, waiting for panic, embarrassment, anything. But Emily only blinked once, absorbing the blow. She did not beg, did not question. She simply nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." Victoria's smile tightened. "You'll come, right?" "Yes, ma'am," Emily said again, calm despite the storm inside. Carla frowned slightly. "She's acting like it's normal." Marco laughed nervously. "Maybe she doesn't understand." Victoria waved her hand, but her eyes lingered on Emily's face. "Fine, just make sure you don't embarrass us. Dress appropriately. Don't come looking like you've been sleeping in the basement." Emily nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria turned back to her friends, already laughing again, excited for the joke they believed would be perfect. Emily stood there, bags cutting into her thin arms, wind whipping her hair. Inside, something shifted, not breaking, but waking. The invitation was meant to shame her, to strip her bare in front of Boston's elite. But in the quiet, condensed stillness that followed, a fierce determination stirred. Back at the penthouse that evening, Vincent returned late. Emily was finishing in the kitchen when she heard the door. He looked weary, coat rumpled, fair skin pale under the hall lights. There had been another confrontation, a bold, unexpected standoff in a dimly lit street near the harbor. A rival crew had blocked one of his sights, cars pulling up suddenly, men stepping out with hard stares. Words had been sharp, threats veiled, tension thick as Vincent's men stood ready behind him. He had diffused it with cold authority, but the remorse gnawed deeper afterward, the violent conflict in his heart between the power he needed and the guilt it brought. He paused, seeing Emily, something unreadable in his eyes. For the first time, he truly noticed her thinness, the exhaustion in her posture. A surge stirred, intense, overwhelming, passionate from that very moment. Not pity, but something deeper, burning. Her quiet dignity amid Victoria's cruelty touched the buried part of him that longed for redemption. Inner torment flared. How could he, a man who commanded fear, feel this pull toward the woman his wife mocked? Victoria told him about the invitation later, laughing. Vincent's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Inside, conflict raged, remorse for the world he had built, now seeing how it crushed someone like Emily. The joke twisted something in him. He did not laugh. Emily, in her cold, lower-floor room, sat on the edge of her bed long after Mia slept. The invitation echoed. Horror, anxiety, fear clawed at her. Yet in the stillness, curiosity grew. What if she went? Not to be mocked, but to stand straight. Poverty's humiliation burned, but so did a tiny spark of hope. The wind howled outside. Inside, both the penthouse and the staff quarters, something irreversible had begun. The October night pressed cold against the small staff window on the lower floor of the Seaport condominium, the wind off the harbor moaning like it carried every unfair thing that had ever happened to Emily Harper. She sat on the narrow bed in the cramped apartment she shared with Mia, the room lit only by a single weak bulb that flickered whenever the building's old wiring strained. Mia slept curled under the thin quilt, her small face peaceful, unaware of the overdue notice taped to the refrigerator door, or the way her mother had given her the last slice of bread that evening. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she dragged the battered cardboard box from beneath the bed. The edges were worn soft from years of being pushed in and out, the tape yellowed and peeling. She knelt on the chilly floor, knees aching against the hard tile, and opened it slowly, as though what lay inside might break if handled too roughly. Dust rose in the dim light. Inside were the relics of a life she had buried long ago. First, the photographs. Faded prints from her teenage years. Emily at 17, taller then, eyes bright with possibility, walking a small charity fashion show in downtown Boston. She had been scouted at a mall, signed to a local agency for a brief, shining moment. There she was on a makeshift runway, posture perfect, wearing a simple black gown her late mother had altered by hand. Another photo showed her mother beside her, proud smile wide, holding Emily's arm. Emily's fingers brushed the image, and pain lanced through her chest, sharp, dizzying, stealing her balance for a moment. Her mother was gone now, taken by illness when medical bills had swallowed everything. Next, the gown itself. Carefully folded in tissue, still preserved, dark silk that had once felt like a dream against her skin. Her mother had bought the fabric on sale, stayed up nights sewing it so Emily could walk that one important show. Emily lifted it now, the material cool and smooth, and held it against her thin frame. It would still fit, perhaps loosely from the weight she had lost, malnourished months of eating last, sleeping little, enduring cold, wind-filled nights when heat was cut low to save money. She whispered to the empty room, voice soft and broken. She invited me, as a joke. The words hung in the air. Horror flooded her, anxiety twisting like a knife, fear that the gala would expose every humiliation, her worn shoes among designer heels, her quiet voice drowned by laughter. Shock numbed her limbs, confusion spun in her head. Why such deliberate cruelty? The unfairness was absurd. One woman planning entertainment from another's shame, while Emily counted coins for Mia's winter coat. Yet in the condensed stillness that followed, something else stirred. Guarded curiosity. What if she went? Not to shrink, not to confirm their view of her as nothing, but to stand straight, like in those old photos, to wear the gown her mother had made with love. A fierce inner torment tore at her, desperate powerlessness clashing with a tiny, burning refusal to break completely. Tears came then, silent and hot, sliding down her thin cheeks. Poverty's deep pity enveloped her, the sleep-deprived nights listening to wind rattle the window, the constant hollow stomach, the humiliating knowledge that one illness, one lost shift, could plunge them into the street. She thought of the unreasonable injustices, Victoria docking pay for an imagined spot on a glass, the building manager ignoring her pleas for better heat in staff quarters, the way elite guests at penthouse parties spoke over her as if she were furniture. Upstairs, in the vast warmth of the master suite, Vincent Rossi could not sleep. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the dark harbor, city lights glittering like cold stars. Victoria slept behind him, oblivious. His mind replayed the day's confrontation, a bold, unexpected standoff in a narrow South Boston street. A rival New York crew had appeared suddenly, vehicles blocking his path to a construction site, men stepping out with hard eyes and veiled threats about territorial respect. Words had flown sharp and low, tension thick as his own men positioned themselves, ready but restrained. Vincent had stared them down, voice calm steel, until they backed off. No blows, but the threat lingered. Remorse gnawed deeper tonight. Each such encounter tore at his heart, violent inner conflict between the power he commanded and the guilt it bred. Lives disrupted, families intimidated, all to protect an empire built on shadows. He hated what he had become, yet could not release it. And now, Victoria's cruel plan for the gala twisted the knife. She had told him with laughter, expecting him to join in. He had not. His thoughts turned to Emily, the quiet maid with tired eyes and unbreakable posture. Seeing her that afternoon on Newbury Street, thin arms laden with bags, face pale in the wind, had struck him harder than any rival's threat. A surge rose in him then, and it burned now. Passionate, intense, overwhelming from the very first true moment he had noticed her dignity. Love, not soft, but fierce, consuming, tearing violently at the walls he had built. How could he, a man steeped in darkness, feel this for the woman his wife mocked? Inner torment raged, suspicion of his own motives, fear that protecting her would drag her deeper into his world, yet an aching need to shield her from every cruelty, starting with this joke. He pressed a hand to the cold glass, breath fogging it. The disparity haunted him. Their heated penthouse versus her cold lower floor. His endless wealth versus her desperate counting of pennies. Gnawing remorse flooded, for the system he upheld that kept people like her crushed, for staying silent when Victoria spoke down to her. Downstairs, Emily folded the gown carefully, placed the photos back, and slid the box under the bed. She stood slowly, legs unsteady, dizziness lingering. Walking to the small mirror by the door, she looked at herself, really looked. Thin face, shadowed eyes, but the posture was still there. "You still look the same," she whispered. "Nothing has changed." Yet everything had. Doubt tried to enter. What if Victoria was right? What if she only embarrassed herself, dragged Mia's fragile security into ridicule? She straightened her shoulders, facing the mirror. "No," she said quietly. "I did not embarrass myself before. I will not start now." Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, a rare message from Victoria. "Do not forget the gala next month. Come prepared." Emily stared at the screen long after it dimmed. Then she typed back, fingers steady despite the storm inside. "Yes, ma'am." She lay down beside Mia, pulling the thin blanket over them both. The wind howled louder outside. Sleep did not come easily. Inner tearing intensified. Fear and curiosity warring. Horror at exposure, clashing with a desperate hope. Poverty's cold grip tightened in the dark, but so did the memory of her mother's words long ago. Life can push, but do not break. Upstairs, Vincent finally turned from the window. He sat heavily in a leather chair, head in hands. The surge of love burned hotter, passionate and impossible. He would not let the joke happen, not the way Victoria planned. Inner conflict raged, remorse for his silence, violent need to protect the woman who had unknowingly cracked his armored heart. Both lay awake in their separate worlds, the opulent penthouse and the cold staff quarters, while the October wind carried change neither could yet name. And in the quiet hours before dawn, something irreversible took root in each of them. The night of the gala arrived on a late November evening in the year 2025, when the Boston wind had turned bitter and the harbor lights shimmered like scattered jewels against the dark water. The rooftop venue atop the new harbor tower glowed with white and gold decorations. Long tables laden with crystal and silver, flowers flown in from warmer climates arranged in perfect cascades. Heat lamps stood like silent sentinels against the cold, and soft music floated above the murmur of arriving guests. Senators in tailored suits, celebrities wrapped in furs, developers whose names appeared on skyline plaques. Expensive cars lined the valet drop-off below, engines purring before disappearing into the private garage. Inside the penthouse earlier that day, chaos had reigned in the best way. Stylists with rolling cases of makeup and hair tools, assistants rushing with garment bags, Victoria Rossi at the center of it all in a silk robe, barking gentle orders while sipping champagne. "Make sure everything is perfect," she had said, waving a manicured hand. "No mistakes tonight." Emily had moved quietly through the preparations, clearing empty coffee cups, adjusting flower arrangements, her own heart pounding with a mixture of dread and quiet resolve. Victoria had dismissed her early. "Go get ready. Come later. I don't want you seen too soon." Emily had nodded softly. "Yes, ma'am." She had retreated to the cold lower floor apartment, where Mia sat on the bed coloring with broken crayons found at a church donation box. Emily had knelt, kissed her daughter's forehead, and whispered, "Mommy has to go upstairs for work tonight. Be good for Mrs. Lopez next door." Mia had nodded solemnly, and Emily's chest had tightened with the familiar pain. Another night away. Another bill for the neighbor's babysitting she could barely afford. Now, hours later, Emily stood in front of the small mirror in her room. The preserved black silk gown hung perfectly, altered slightly by careful hand stitching to fit her thinner frame. Her hair, usually pulled back plainly, was pinned elegantly with pins saved from years ago. No jewelry, no expensive makeup, just the natural poise that had once carried her down runways, now resurfacing like a buried memory. She looked at herself and whispered, "You can do this." Her voice trembled, but her shoulders straightened. Vincent Rossi arrived at the venue early, fair skin flushed from the wind, eyes scanning every detail. Another confrontation had shadowed his day, a bold, unexpected standoff in a narrow North End alley. A rival crew had cornered one of his lieutenants near a construction site, words sharp and threatening about overstepping boundaries. Vincent had arrived with Marco and 2 others, vehicles pulling up suddenly, tension thick as stairs locked across the dim street. He had spoken low and steady, authority cutting through the cold air until the rivals backed down. No blows landed, but the threat lingered like smoke. Remorse gnawed deeper afterward, the violent inner conflict between the power he wielded and the guilt it bred. Yet tonight, something else burned hotter, the overwhelming surge of love for Emily, passionate and intense since the moment her quiet strength had pierced him. He had argued quietly with Victoria about the invitation, but she had laughed it off. His heart tore now, fierce need to protect her clashing with fear that his world would only hurt her more. The rooftop slowly filled. Guests greeted Victoria like royalty. "Happy birthday to Vincent," they said, air kissing her cheeks. Carla and Marco stood close, scanning the crowd. "So where is our entertainment?" Carla whispered. Victoria smiled proudly. "She'll come. Let her suffer waiting." Laughter followed, low and excited. Time passed. Plates of delicate food circulated. Champagne flowed. Guests began asking. "I heard you invited your maid," one woman said with a sly smile. Victoria laughed. "Oh, she'll show. Probably still figuring out what to wear." More chuckles. The wait became part of the fun. Downstairs, Emily stepped out of the service elevator, heart hammering. The gown swished softly against her legs. She walked through the private corridor to the rooftop door, each step measured despite the dizziness threatening her balance. Cold wind hit her face as the door opened. For a moment, no one noticed. Then heads turned. She stepped fully onto the rooftop. The space seemed to freeze. Music continued softly, but conversation hushed like wind dying. Phones lifted slowly. Whispers rippled outward. "Who is that? Is she a model? I've never seen her before." Emily walked slowly, not rushing, not dragging her feet. The silk gown caught the golden lights, her posture flawless, chin level. She did not look around lost. She did not bend her head. The crowd parted without being asked. Victoria stood near the center, champagne glass in hand, smile wide for arriving guests. She turned at the murmurs, her face stiffened. The smile vanished so quickly it might never have been. "Wait," Carla whispered, grabbing her arm. "Is that Emily?" Victoria did not answer at first. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. "No," she muttered. "That can't be." Vincent, standing a few steps away, speaking to a developer, felt the shift in the air. He turned. Time slowed. Emily walked toward the center, calm and steady. The sight struck him like lightning. Her beauty, her grace, the unbreakable dignity shining through exhaustion and poverty. The love that had been burning surged higher, passionate and consuming, tearing violently at his heart. Inner torment raged, remorse for the cruelty planned, fierce need to shield her, fear that his dark world made him unworthy. Yet he could not look away. Whispers spread like fire. "She is stunning. Look at her walk. Who invited her?" Phones flashed quietly. Emily stopped a few steps into the main space, eyes moving slowly across the crowd, not greedy, not afraid. Then her gaze met Victoria's. Everything unspoken flashed between them. Every sharp word, every docked pay, every cold night below while warmth reigned above. Emily nodded once, politely. "Good evening, ma'am." Her voice was calm, clear, soft but steady. Guests nearby heard the ma'am and exchanged glances. Carla's mouth fell open. Victoria forced a laugh that sounded hollow. "Emily," she said loudly, "you came." "Yes, ma'am," Emily replied. "Happy birthday to Mr. Rossi." Silence followed, thick and stunned. Then someone clapped, slowly at first, then others joined, confused but impressed. Victoria gripped her glass tighter, knuckles pale. "Why does she look like that?" Marco whispered. Victoria hissed back, "I don't know." A man in an expensive suit stepped forward, smiling warmly. "Good evening. Welcome." "Good evening, sir," Emily said politely. He nodded with genuine respect. "You look incredible." "Thank you, sir." Vincent watched, chest tight. The man greeting her with respect was someone who rarely extended it to anyone outside his circle. Remorse and love warred violently inside him. This was the woman his wife had planned to mock, now commanding the room without a word of boast. Another woman approached, eyes bright. "Are you one of the guests?" "Yes," Emily said simply. The woman laughed softly. "You carry yourself beautifully. May I take a picture?" Emily hesitated only a second, then nodded. "All right." The flash popped. Victoria's breath caught. "What is happening?" she whispered to Carla. "This wasn't the plan." Emily moved toward a quieter spot near the edge, overlooking the harbor lights. Almost immediately, a small group formed around her. Women complimenting her gown, men asking polite questions. She answered softly, never bragging, never explaining her poverty or pain. Her calm drew them closer. Vincent could not stay still. He moved nearer, heart pounding with the intensity of his feelings. Inner conflict tore. The urge to pull her away from the crowd, to protect her from Victoria's coming anger, clashing with awe at her strength. The reversal was complete. The joke had turned, and the rooftop now belonged, in that moment, to the quiet maid in the silk gown. Victoria marched toward her, smile too wide. "Emily," she said sharply, "come here." The group looked up. Emily turned calmly. "Yes, ma'am." As she walked back, the difference struck everyone. Emily poised and steady, Victoria suddenly unsure. Vincent watched, the surge of love burning brighter, passionate and undeniable. Something irreversible had happened tonight. The woman meant to be shamed had, without a single harsh word, reversed every expectation. And in the golden lights above the cold harbor, the night shifted forever. The rooftop gala continued under the late November stars, heat lamps glowing against the sharp Boston chill. But the air inside the circle of guests had changed completely. The music played on, soft and elegant, glasses clinked, laughter rose and fell. Yet every current seemed to flow toward Emily Harper now. She stood near the edge overlooking the dark harbor, the black silk gown catching the golden lights, her thin frame somehow filling the space with quiet presence. People moved toward her as if drawn by something they could not name. A small group had already formed, 2 women in designer dresses, a well-known developer, a young actress filming in the city. They asked gentle questions. "Where did you get that gown? Have you walked shows before?" Emily answered softly, never boasting, her voice timid yet steady. "It was made for me a long time ago." "Yes, once, when I was younger." Her words were simple, but the calm in them pulled people closer. Phones rose quietly. Photos were taken without asking, flashes soft in the night. Victoria Rossi watched from across the rooftop, champagne glass forgotten in her hand. Her face had tightened into something hard and brittle. "This is my husband's party," she whispered fiercely to Carla. "Why is everyone looking at her?" Carla did not answer at once. Her own eyes stayed on Emily. "People are just curious," she said finally, but the words sounded weak. Marco leaned in. "She's becoming the story tonight." Victoria's chest rose and fell too quickly. The joke had slipped from her grasp, and something cold settled inside her. Vincent Rossi stood a little apart, fair skin pale under the lights, watching every movement Emily made. The surge of love that had struck him earlier now burned hotter, passionate and fierce, tearing violently at the walls around his heart. He had built an empire on control, on fear carefully measured. Yet here was a woman whose quiet strength undid him completely. Inner torment raged, gnawing remorse for the cruelty his wife had planned, violent conflict between his need to protect Emily and the knowledge that his world was poison. How could he love her this intensely, this suddenly, when he had spent years burying anything soft? Yet he could not look away. Every compliment directed at her felt like a gift he wanted to give himself. Every smile she offered a wound and a healing at once. A woman approached Emily again, eyes bright with genuine admiration. "You should be modeling now. You have the walk, the presence." Emily smiled lightly, almost sadly. "I don't think about things like that anymore." The woman shook her head. "You should, really." A man nearby added, "And the way you carry yourself, it's natural." Emily thanked them softly, but inside confusion swirled. Shock numbed her limbs. The attention felt unreal, disorienting. She, who counted pennies for Mia's milk, who endured cold nights in the staff quarters with wind rattling the thin windows, suddenly the center of this glittering world. Dizziness threatened her balance. Pain shot through her heart at the absurdity, the unfairness that poverty had hidden her so completely, while wealth now lifted her without warning. Across the rooftop, a professional photographer who covered society events for magazines had been watching quietly. He lifted his camera again, capturing Emily as she laughed softly at something said. The shutter clicked. Emily noticed and looked up. "Oh," she said politely. "I'm sorry, did I ruin the shot?" The man smiled. "No, you are the shot." Emily blinked, color rising in her pale cheeks. Victoria overheard and felt heat rise to her face. She stepped forward quickly. "Emily," she called, voice sharp beneath the forced smile. "Are you enjoying yourself? You've been standing a long time." The group around Emily looked up. "Yes, ma'am," Emily replied calmly. Victoria added, too brightly, "You can sit, or perhaps help with something?" One of the women frowned slightly. "Help?" Victoria laughed quickly. "Oh, you know, she likes to stay busy." Emily met her eyes for a moment. "I'm fine, ma'am," she said gently. The woman who had frowned smiled at Emily. "Good. Don't go anywhere." Victoria turned away sharply, chest tight with something she could not name. Carla followed. "Victoria, calm down." "Did you hear how they spoke to her?" Victoria hissed. "Like she belongs here." Carla hesitated. "Maybe tonight she does." Photos of Emily began appearing online almost immediately. Tagged from the event, captions wondering who the mystery woman in the vintage gown was. Likes and comments poured in. Within an hour, a top Los Angeles agent named Lena Voss, in Boston for Fashion Week scouting, saw the images. She had been at the gala as a guest. Now she moved through the crowd, eyes fixed on Emily. Vincent noticed her approach and felt his heart tighten further. Lena was known for discovering faces that lasted. She stopped in front of Emily, smiling professionally but warmly. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm Lena Voss. I work with models." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "Good evening." Lena nodded toward the harbor lights. "You have something rare. Have you ever considered walking again?" Emily paused, the question hitting like a memory too heavy to hold. "A long time ago," she said softly. Lena pulled out a card. "I'd love to talk. An audition, nothing more. Just to see." Emily took the card with trembling fingers. "Thank you. Vincent watched the exchange, inner conflict tearing deeper. Joy for her, fierce, burning joy, clashed with fear that opportunity would pull her from the danger of his world, or worse, drag her into its shadows. Remorse flooded him again, for every cold night she had endured below his penthouse, for every skipped meal while his table overflowed. Later, when the music grew louder and guests began to dance, Emily stepped aside for a moment of quiet. She leaned against the railing, looking down at the city lights, dizziness returning. The contrast struck her anew, the warmth up here, the cold below, the abundance of food she had not touched because her stomach had shrunk from scarcity, the way people now saw her when for years she had been invisible. Tears pricked, but she blinked them back. Guarded curiosity mixed with fear. What would this mean for Mia, for their fragile life? Vincent could stay away no longer. He approached slowly, stopping beside her. "You changed everything tonight," he said quietly, voice low and rough with emotion. Emily turned, startled. "Mr. Rossi," she dipped her head politely. "Thank you for letting me come." He looked at her fully, the love in his eyes intense, almost painful. "You belong here," he said, the words torn from somewhere deep. Inner torment flashed across his face, remorse for his silence until now, violent need to tell her everything he felt. But he only added, "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Emily felt the weight of his gaze, confusion and a strange warmth stirring. Shock numbed her for a moment. No one in this world had ever spoken to her like that. She managed a soft, "Thank you, sir." By the time the gala wound down, offers had been whispered, cards pressed into her hand, invitations to auditions in New York and Los Angeles. Photos continued spreading online, captions calling her the night's discovery. Victoria left early, face tight, refusing to look back. Vincent lingered until the end, watching Emily thank the last guests, her posture never faltering. As Emily finally stepped into the service elevator alone, the door closing on the golden rooftop, she leaned against the wall. The card from Lena felt heavy in her hand. Possibility and terror warred inside her, dizziness, pain, a violent tearing at the walls poverty had built. She, who had endured so much cold and hunger, suddenly seen. And upstairs, Vincent stood alone on the now empty rooftop, wind cutting through his coat. The passionate love burned uncontrollably now, fierce and undeniable. Inner conflict raged harder than any street confrontation. He would protect her, whatever the cost, even if it meant facing the darkness in himself. The night had shifted attention forever, and with it, a quiet Maid began to rise. The days after the gala passed in a strange, suspended quiet inside the Seaport penthouse. The November wind grew colder, rattling the high windows upstairs, while it howled through the cracked seals of the staff quarters below. Emily Harper moved through her duties as always, cleaning rooms that still smelled faintly of the gala's flowers, polishing silver that had held champagne for people who now asked about her in magazine comments. Her body ached deeper than usual, thin, malnourished, sleep-deprived from nights lying awake replaying the rooftop lights, the whispers, the card from Lena Voss burning a hole in her worn purse. She had not yet called the agent. Fear held her back, fear that it was all a dream, that one audition would expose how far she had fallen, how poverty had thinned her face and hollowed her strength. Mia needed new shoes. The electric bill had come with a red warning. The unfairness pressed heavier. One night of borrowed silk and the world noticed. Years of quiet endurance and no one had seen. Victoria barely spoke to her now. Orders came sharp and short, eyes avoiding Emily's. The reversal at the party had left a bruise Victoria could not name. She spent hours on the phone, complaining to friends, voice rising with forced laughter that cracked at the edges. Vincent Rossi noticed everything. He had always noticed more than he let on, but now Emily filled every quiet moment. The passionate love that had ignited on the rooftop now consumed him. Intense, burning, tearing violently at the heart he had armored for years. He watched her from doorways, the way she lifted heavy trays with thinning arms, the careful way she saved leftovers for Mia, the straight back that refused to bend even when exhaustion pulled at her. Remorse gnawed without mercy. For every time Victoria had spoken down to her in his presence, for every cold night she had spent directly beneath his heated floors, for the empire he had built that widened the gulf between their worlds. That afternoon, another confrontation shadowed him. A rival New York family had pushed again, vehicles appearing suddenly outside a South Boston warehouse, men stepping out with hard stares and words about respecting lines. Vincent had arrived with Marco and Carla, tension thick in the salty air near the docks, stares locked, threats veiled but clear. He had spoken low, authority cold and absolute, until the rivals retreated. No blows, but the standoff left his hands shaking afterward. Violent inner conflict raged, the power he needed to protect his family clashing with the guilt that it kept people like Emily crushed beneath it. He returned to the penthouse earlier than expected. Emily was in the kitchen, folding laundry at the marble island, steam rising from the dryer in the adjacent room. She looked up, startled. "Mr. Rossi." Her voice was soft, timid, polite as always. She dipped her head slightly. Vincent paused in the doorway, coat still on. Something cracked inside him then. The sight of her thin fingers smoothing expensive linens while her own clothes hung threadbare in the staff closet. "Emily," he said, voice rougher than intended. "Sit, please." She hesitated, confusion flickering. No one in this house had ever asked her to sit. Guarded curiosity mixed with anxiety. She perched on the edge of a stool, hands folded tight. Vincent removed his coat slowly, buying time against the storm inside. He poured water from a crystal pitcher, water she refilled daily, and slid a glass toward her. "Drink." Emily took it with both hands, sipping carefully. The simple kindness disoriented her. Dizziness threatened, numbness spreading. Why now? Suspicion stirred, but beneath it a strange warmth. He leaned against the counter, fair skin pale under the pendant lights. "The gala," he began, then stopped. Remorse flooded his face. What Victoria planned, it was wrong, cruel. The words came hard, torn from somewhere deep. Emily's eyes widened slightly. Shock numbed her tongue. "I should have stopped it," he continued, voice low. "I didn't. I'm sorry." The apology hung between them, heavy and real. Vincent's heart tore violently, love surging alongside guilt, the fierce need to protect her clashing with fear that his darkness would taint her. Emily set the glass down carefully. "It's all right, sir," she said softly, but her voice trembled. Inside, turmoil escalated, confusion at this powerful man apologizing to her, horror that he had noticed her suffering, a guarded curiosity about what lay behind his eyes. Tears pricked, but she blinked them back. "It's not all right," Vincent said fiercely, then softened. "You've worked here, how long?" 3 years, sir." He nodded slowly. 3 years, and I never... He stopped again, jaw tight. "Tell me about the modeling, the gown." Emily's breath caught. She spoke haltingly at first, voice timid. "When I was 17, I was scouted, walked a few small shows. My mother, she made the gown. Then life changed. Illness, bills, an early marriage that turned sour, Mia's birth, poverty closing like a trap. She did not say all of it, but enough. Her hands shook slightly, recounting it. Vincent listened without interrupting, face shadowed with torment. Every word deepened the crack in his armor. The passionate love burned hotter. He wanted to lift every burden, shield her from every cold night, give her the world she had lost. Yet remorse tore deeper. His wealth built on shadows, while she had endured such quiet misery directly beneath it. "Why did you stop?" he asked gently. Emily looked down. "I had Mia. No money for childcare, no strength left after shifts. The unfairness spilled out softly, the absurd injustices. Agencies dropping her when she missed castings for doctor's visits, landlords raising rent on tiny apartments, food stamps running out before the month ended." Vincent's hands clenched at his sides. Inner conflict raged violently. The man who commanded Boston's shadows suddenly powerless against her past pain. "You should call the agent," he said finally. "Lena Voss." Emily looked up, startled. "I don't know, sir." Fear flickered, fear of failure, of dragging Mia into uncertainty. "You should," he repeated, voice steady but eyes burning with intensity. "You deserve more than this." The words carried everything he could not yet say, the overwhelming love, the fierce need to see her rise. Emily felt dizziness return, the room tilting slightly. Shock and confusion warred with a tiny spark of hope. No one had ever spoken to her like this, like she mattered beyond cleaning schedules. Tears threatened again. She stood quickly to hide them. "Thank you, sir. I should finish the laundry." Vincent watched her go, heart tearing anew. He wanted to follow, to promise everything, safety, warmth, a life without want. But fear held him. Fear that his love would only bring danger, that his world would destroy the light he now craved. Later that night, Emily lay beside sleeping Mia in the cold staff room, wind rattling the window. The conversation replayed, disorienting and numbing. A powerful man had apologized to her, had seen her. Inner torment intensified, desperate powerlessness clashing with guarded curiosity about what his attention meant. Poverty's humiliation pressed closer, the thin blanket, the empty refrigerator tomorrow. Yet Vincent's words lingered like warmth she dared not trust. Upstairs, Vincent stood at his study window overlooking the dark harbor. The love consumed him now, passionate and unstoppable. He would protect her, whatever the cost, even from himself if needed. But the crack in his armor had widened into something irreversible. And in the quiet hours, both hearts tore deeper, pulled toward a future neither could yet see. The first week of December brought sleet to Boston, gray and stinging, coating the city in a thin, miserable glaze. Inside the Seaport penthouse, the heat ran constantly, thick rugs muffling every step, while downstairs in the staff quarters, the radiator clanked uselessly, offering only faint warmth against the wind that slipped through the old window frames. Emily Harper had not slept properly in days. The electric bill had arrived with a shut-off notice. She had paid just enough to keep the lights on, leaving nothing for groceries beyond bread and peanut butter. Mia's cough had started, small at first, then deeper, and Emily had lain awake listening to it, thin blanket pulled tight, stomach hollow, heart heavy with the familiar terror that one more bill could push them into the street. She had called Lena Voss the day after Vincent's apology. The conversation had been short, kind, terrifying. An audition in New York in 2 weeks. Emily had thanked the agent softly, voice trembling, then hung up and sat on the cold floor, dizzy with hope and fear. What if she failed? What if she succeeded and lost this fragile roof over Mia's head? Poverty's humiliation pressed harder. The way she rationed every meal, the way she wore the same thin sweater day after day, the way sleep deprivation left her unsteady on her feet. That evening, she had finished cleaning the penthouse kitchen and was carrying the last load of laundry down the service corridor when the building's side door buzzed. She paused, confused. No deliveries were scheduled. The buzzer sounded again, insistent, angry. She set the basket down and approached the door cautiously. The man who pushed inside was someone she had hoped never to see again. Her ex-husband, Daniel, thin-faced, eyes wild, clothes damp from the sleet. He had been released from prison 3 months earlier. She had changed addresses, changed phone numbers, but somehow he had found her. "You thought you could hide?" he snarled, stepping close. "Mia's my kid, too." Emily backed away, heart hammering, voice soft but shaking. "Please, Daniel, leave. She's sleeping." Horror flooded her, numbness spreading through her limbs, legs threatening to give out. He grabbed her arm, grip bruising. "You don't get to decide. I'm taking her tonight." Panic clawed at her throat. She tried to pull free, but he was stronger, angrier. The corridor was empty. The security cameras here were old, often ignored. She opened her mouth to call for help, but fear choked the sound. Then footsteps, fast, heavy, echoed from the main hallway. Vincent Rossi appeared at the end of the corridor, coat still on, fair skin flushed from the cold outside. He had returned early from a meeting, restless, unable to stay away from the building where Emily worked. His eyes took in the scene in an instant. Emily's pale face, Daniel's hand on her arm, the fear in her posture. "Get your hands off her," Vincent said, voice low and cold. Daniel turned, sneering. "This doesn't concern you, rich boy." Vincent stepped forward, calm but radiating authority. "It does now." Daniel laughed harshly and shoved Emily aside. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, dizziness spinning her vision. Vincent moved faster than she had ever seen him move, closing the distance, grabbing Daniel's wrist in a grip that made the other man wince. No punches, no shouting, just controlled, unyielding pressure. "You have 3 seconds to walk out that door," Vincent said quietly, "or you'll be carried out." Daniel tried to twist free. Vincent tightened his hold. Something in Vincent's eyes, something dark, final, made Daniel freeze. "You don't know who I am," Daniel spat. "I know exactly who you are," Vincent answered. "And I know what happens to men who threaten women in my building." Daniel looked from Vincent to Emily, then back. He yanked his arm free and back toward the door, muttering threats under his breath. Vincent followed until the man was outside in the sleet, then slammed the door and locked it. Silence fell, broken only by Emily's ragged breathing. Vincent turned to her. His face was pale, hands still clenched. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but her legs gave way. She slid down the wall, sitting hard on the cold floor, arms wrapped around herself. Shock numbed her completely. Dizziness, pain, disorientation crashing together. Vincent knelt in front of her, coat brushing the tile. "Emily, look at me." She lifted her eyes, tears streaming silently. He wanted Mia." "He's not getting near her," Vincent said fiercely. "Not tonight. Not ever." He helped her stand, one arm steady around her waist. She leaned into him without thinking, too shaken to care about propriety. He guided her to the staff apartment, opened the door quietly so as not to wake Mia, and settled her on the small couch. He found a blanket, thin but better than nothing, and draped it over her shoulders. "I'll stay until you're steady," he said softly. Emily nodded, voice barely audible. "Thank you, sir." Vincent sat across from her on a rickety chair that creaked under his weight. The contrast struck them both, his tailored coat still damp from sleet, her threadbare sweater and trembling hands. The passionate love that had been burning inside him now roared, fierce, protective, overwhelming. Inner torment tore at him, remorse that she had ever been in this position, violent conflict between wanting to wrap her in safety and knowing his world had its own dangers. Yet he could not leave her like this. He spoke quietly, voice rough with emotion. "I'm making sure he doesn't come back. My people will handle it, quietly. Legally if possible, but he won't touch either of you again." Emily looked at him, eyes wide with a mix of fear and something softer. "Why are you doing this?" Vincent's jaw tightened, because no one should live afraid in their own home. He paused, then added, almost a whisper, "Because I can't stand seeing you afraid." The words hung between them. Emily felt a new kind of shock, numbness giving way to confusion, then to a strange, aching warmth. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever stepped between her and danger. Vincent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Marco, reporting that Daniel had been escorted off the property and warned in no uncertain terms. Vincent exhaled, relief mixing with the ongoing storm inside him. Emily's voice came softly. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," he said simply. Then, after a long silence, "I've watched you here for years. Quiet, strong, taking everything Victoria threw at you and never breaking. Tonight I saw how much you've carried alone. I should have seen it sooner." Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks again. "I'm just trying to keep Mia safe." Vincent leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes locked on hers. "You don't have to do it alone anymore." The promise landed heavy. Emily's heart tore. Fear of trusting, curiosity about what this meant, a desperate longing for the safety he offered. She wiped her eyes, voice trembling. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Vincent answered. "Just let me help." He stayed until her breathing steadied, until Mia's cough quieted in the next room. When he finally stood to leave, he paused at the door. "Lock it behind me. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, call me, day or night." Emily nodded, standing shakily to follow him. At the threshold, she spoke so softly he almost missed it. "Thank you, Mr. Rossi, for everything." He looked back, love burning so fiercely in his eyes it nearly hurt. "Vincent," he corrected gently. "Call me Vincent." She blinked, startled, then nodded again. The door closed softly behind him. Alone again, Emily sank onto the couch, blanket pulled tight. The night's terror still echoed, but so did Vincent's promise. Inner turmoil raged. Horror at how close she had come to losing Mia. Shock at the powerful man who had just shielded her. A confusing surge of gratitude that felt dangerously close to something deeper. Upstairs, Vincent stood at his window, overlooking the dark, sleet-swept harbor. The love consumed him now, passionate and unyielding. Remorse and need warred violently. He had protected her tonight, but his world still carried shadows. Yet he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not let her face another night like this alone. The crack in his armor had become a chasm, and through it, something new was rising. The days following the confrontation in the corridor passed in a hushed, fragile stillness inside the Seaport penthouse. December sleet gave way to heavier snow, blanketing Boston in white silence, muffling the harbor horns and softening the city lights that glowed through the high windows. Upstairs, fires burned constantly in marble fireplaces, fit carpets and heated floors keeping every room warm as summer. Downstairs in the staff quarters, the radiator continued its half-hearted clank, offering little against the wind that found every crack. Emily Harper moved through her shifts like a ghost, body thinner than ever, face shadowed from sleepless nights, hands chapped and trembling as she polished silver that would never be hers. Mia's cough had worsened. The pediatric clinic had turned them away without insurance pre-approval, leaving Emily with over-the-counter syrup bought on credit at the corner pharmacy. She had skipped 3 meals in a row, giving her portions to her daughter, stomach cramping with hunger while she cleaned plates of gourmet leftovers upstairs. Poverty's grip tightened cruelly. The building manager had posted a notice about upcoming maintenance fees that would raise staff rent. Another absurd injustice on top of the shut-off warnings and the constant, humiliating knowledge that one more emergency could end everything. Vincent Rossi watched her constantly now, though he tried to hide it. The passionate love that had broken through the night he shielded her from Daniel now ruled him entirely. Intense, burning, tearing at every guarded place inside him. He found excuses to pass through rooms she cleaned, to ask quiet questions about Mia's health, to leave untouched plates of food where she would find them. Remorse gnawed without relief. For the years he had lived in luxury while she suffered directly below. For the empire that widened the gulf between them. For staying silent too long. Victoria had left for a spa week in New York, complaining bitterly about unreliable help. Her absence left the penthouse quieter, the air heavier with unspoken things. One late afternoon, snow falling thick outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Vincent found Emily in the library, folding freshly laundered throws. She stood on a small step stool, reaching a high shelf, thin arms straining, face pale with exhaustion. He entered silently, then spoke her name softly so as not to startle her. Emily. She turned too quickly, foot slipping on the stool. Vincent crossed the room in 2 strides, catching her before she fell. His hand steadied her waist, hers clutched his shoulders for balance. For a moment they stayed like that, close enough to feel each other's breath, snow light swirling beyond the glass. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered automatically, voice timid, trying to step back. But his hands did not release her at once. "Vincent," he corrected again, gentler this time. His eyes searched her face, taking in the shadows under her eyes, the sharpness of her cheekbones. Inner torment flashed across his features. "You're not eating." Emily looked down, cheeks warming with humiliation. "I'm fine, sir." Vincent. The name felt strange on her tongue, too intimate. "You're not," he said quietly. "And Mia's cough, I heard it last night through the vents." Guilt twisted his voice. He released her slowly, as if it hurt to let go. "Sit, please." She obeyed, perching on the edge of a leather armchair that probably cost more than her yearly wages. Vincent pulled another chair close, sitting so their knees nearly touched. Snow light filled the room with soft gray. "I had my doctor visit this morning," he said, discreetly. "Mia has an appointment tomorrow. Best pediatric pulmonologist in Boston. Everything covered." He watched her reaction carefully. Emily's eyes filled instantly. Shock numbed her. Dizziness returned. I can't accept that." Her voice broke. "We can't pay." "You don't have to," Vincent cut in gently. "Let me do this, please." Tears slipped down her cheeks. The unfairness of her life crashed against this sudden kindness, confusing, overwhelming. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing all this?" Vincent leaned forward, elbows on knees, fair skin taut with emotion. The words he had held back for weeks pressed against his throat. Remorse and love warred violently inside him. "Because the night of the gala," he began, voice low and rough, "when you walked in wearing that gown, something broke open in me. I saw you, really saw you. The strength you carry every day, the way you endure everything thrown at you and still stand straight." He paused, jaw tight. "And I saw how cruelly my world has treated you, how I let it." Emily stared, heart pounding. Disorientation spun through her, numbness giving way to a painful warmth. "I've spent years building walls," Vincent continued, "controlling everything, intimidating when I had to, living with the guilt of it." His eyes met hers, burning with intensity. "But you quietly carrying more than anyone should, never complaining, protecting your daughter with everything you have, that undid me. I fell in love with you that night, Emily, not gradually, all at once, fiercely, completely." The confession hung in the snow-lit air. Emily's breath caught. Shock tore through her, violent, disorienting. A powerful man, wealthy beyond imagining, saying he loved her. Her, the thin, exhausted maid who counted pennies for medicine. Tears fell faster. "I don't understand," she whispered, voice trembling. "People like you we're not..." Vincent reached out slowly, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. "I don't care about people like me. I care about you, about Mia, about giving you the safety and warmth you should have had all along." His grip tightened gently. "I know my world is dangerous. I know I carry shadows, but I swear I would burn it all down before letting anything touch you again. Emily's heart tore in every direction. Fear of believing, suspicion that it couldn't last, a desperate, aching need to be seen and protected after years alone. The contrast crushed her. His strong, warm hands against her thin, chapped ones. His tailored shirt against her worn sweater. The heated library against her cold nights below. "I'm scared," she admitted softly, tears streaming. "Scared to hope. Scared for Mia if I trust wrong again." Vincent's face twisted with pain. "I know, and I have no right to ask you to trust me, not after everything." Remorse flooded his voice. "But I'm asking anyway. Let me prove it, day by day." Silence settled, condensed and heavy with emotion. Snow fell thicker outside. Emily looked at their joined hands, then up into his eyes. Eyes that held love so fierce it almost frightened her, yet warmed places long frozen. "I don't know what this means," she whispered finally, "but thank you for seeing me." Vincent brought her hands to his lips briefly, a gesture so tender it stole her breath. "I see you," he said against her fingers, "and I'm not going anywhere." He released her slowly, standing. "The doctor's appointment is at 10 tomorrow. A car will take you and Mia. No arguments." His tone softened. "And there's food in the kitchen, real food. Eat, please." Emily nodded, too overwhelmed for words. He left the library quietly, closing the door behind him. Alone, she sat in the vast chair, tears falling unchecked. Inner turmoil raged harder than ever. Confusion, fear, a burning curiosity about this new reality. Poverty's cold grip still clung, but Vincent's confession had cracked it, letting in light she was terrified to believe in. Upstairs later, Vincent stood at his bedroom window, snow swirling beyond the glass. The love consumed him utterly now, passionate, protective, painful in its intensity. Inner conflict tore deeper. Remorse for the man he had been, violent need to become the one she deserved. He would shield her from every shadow, even his own if necessary. And in the quiet, snow-covered city, two hearts, long guarded, began, tremblingly, to thaw toward each other. 2 weeks later, on a clear mid-December afternoon in the year 2025, Emily Harper stood beneath the bright lights of a vast Los Angeles runway studio. The space hummed with controlled chaos, stylists adjusting final pins, photographers testing angles, music pulsing low as models lined up backstage. Emily's heart pounded so fiercely she feared it would shake the simple black dress she wore for the test walk. Lena Voss had arranged everything swiftly: travel for her and Mia, a quiet hotel suite paid anonymously, appointments with the best doctors for Mia's lingering cough. All of it felt borrowed, unreal, like a dream she might wake from back in the cold staff quarters. She had left Boston with Vincent's quiet promise ringing in her ears. "Go, shine. We'll be here when you return." His eyes had held that burning intensity, the passionate love now openly acknowledged between them in stolen glances and careful touches. Yet fear clung to her, fear that success would widen the gulf, that poverty's long humiliation had marked her too deeply to belong in this world. The audition began. Emily stepped onto the long white runway, lights hot on her skin, posture straight despite the dizziness that still visited her when exhaustion won. She walked, slow, steady, the muscle memory from years ago guiding her. The room quieted. Lena watched from the front row, eyes widening. Cameras clicked. When Emily reached the end and turned, the small audience broke into genuine applause. Lena stood. "Welcome back," she said simply, smiling wide. "You're in." Tears pricked Emily's eyes, but she blinked them away. Shock numbed her limbs. Confusion spun in her head. She, who had rationed bread crusts for Mia, suddenly offered contracts and runway shows. The disparity tore at her heart. the unfairness that talent had lain buried under survival for so long. Her first major show came quickly, a prestigious pre-spring collection in a downtown Los Angeles venue, white tents glowing under evening lights, front row filled with editors, buyers, celebrities. Emily walked near the finale, wearing a flowing ivory gown that caught every spotlight. The audience rose in standing ovation as she passed. Phones lifted, flashes popped. Backstage afterward, congratulations poured in. You owned that stage. Rising star. Emily thanked them softly, voice timid, overwhelmed. Vincent had come. He stood in the shadows near the exit, fair skin pale under the dim lights, coat collar turned up. He had flown in secretly, unable to stay away. Watching her walk, poised, radiant, unbreakable, his love surged higher, passionate and consuming. Inner torment raged. Pride in her triumph clashing with violent fear that his world's shadows might reach her here. Remorse gnawed for every cold night he had not prevented, every skipped meal he had not known about. He waited until the crowd thinned, then approached backstage. Emily saw him and froze, gown still swirling around her ankles. Vincent. Her voice was soft, breathless. You came. I had to, he said quietly, eyes burning. You were magnificent. He reached for her hand, careful of the makeup artist nearby. I'm so proud of you. Emily's heart tore anew, shock at seeing him here, confusion at how deeply his presence steadied her, a burning warmth spreading through the exhaustion. Tears threatened. I was so scared, she admitted, that I'd forget how, that I didn't belong. You belong anywhere you choose, he said fiercely, then softer. You always did. They stepped into a quieter corner, away from the bustle. Vincent's hand brushed her cheek. Mia? With the nanny you arranged. She's asleep, drawing pictures of runways now. Emily laughed softly, then grew serious. None of this would have happened without you. Vincent shook his head. It happened because of you. I just cleared a little space. The moment stretched, charged with everything unspoken. Emily leaned into him slightly, the gown's silk against his coat. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to breathe fully. Then chaos erupted. Shouts rose near the backstage entrance. Security voices sharpened. Vincent tensed instantly, hand moving inside his coat. He turned, shielding Emily with his body. 3 men in dark jackets pushed past frantic staff, eyes scanning. One locked on Vincent. Rossi, he called, voice cold. Message from New York. You're overstepping. Vincent's face hardened. The rival family, emboldened by rumors of his distraction, had chosen tonight to strike, not with open conflict, but with intimidation. A public attempt to grab leverage, to show they could reach him anywhere. Security moved in, but the men were fast. One lunged toward Emily, clearly intending to use her as hostage. Vincent reacted without thought, stepping between them, taking the man down with controlled force. No blows landed, but pressure precise. His 2 discreet bodyguards, always nearby, never obvious, intercepted the others. The struggle was brief, tense, contained. Staff screamed, phones recorded from afar. Within moments, venue security swarmed, the intruders subdued and removed for police. But in the scuffle, a stray elbow caught Vincent's shoulder. He winced, blood darkening his coat sleeve. A shallow graze, nothing serious. Emily saw it and paled. Vincent! He turned to her, face tight with pain and fury. I'm fine. But his voice shook. He pulled her close, arm protective around her despite the injury. They won't touch you. I swear it. Backstage cleared rapidly. Lena appeared, horrified. Are you both all right? Vincent nodded curtly, already on the phone to Marco, coordinating cleanup, ensuring the men faced consequences. Emily clung to his uninjured arm, legs unsteady, dizziness returning in waves. Shock numbed her completely. One moment triumph, the next danger because of her connection to him. They were escorted to a private waiting room. A medic arrived quickly, Vincent's arrangement, bandaging the graze efficiently. Emily sat beside him, hand gripping his. Tears fell silently now. "I'm sorry," Vincent said roughly, turning to her. "This is my world. The shadows I told you about. They saw you with me tonight, thought you were leverage." Emily shook her head, voice trembling. "You protected me. Again." She touched the bandage gently. "You got hurt because of me." "No," he said fiercely, "because of them. Because I won't let anyone near you." His eyes burned with love and torment. "I'd take 100 grazes before letting anything happen to you or Mia." The confession, the raw vulnerability, tore at Emily's heart. Inner turmoil escalated violently. Fear of his dangerous world clashing with the overwhelming safety she felt in his arms. Confusion at how deeply she now needed him. Poverty's long humiliation faded against this new terror, yet his protection felt like the only solid thing left. "I was so scared," she whispered. "But when you stepped in front of me, I knew you wouldn't let go." Vincent cupped her face gently. "Never." The word carried everything: passionate love, fierce promise, remorse for bringing danger close. "I'll handle this, clean it up, for you, for us." Emily leaned her forehead against his, tears mixing with relief. In the quiet after chaos, their breathing synced. The runway triumph still glowed, but the attack had forged something unbreakable between them. Outside, snow began to fall in Los Angeles, an unusual, gentle flurry. Inside, two hearts, once separated by every unfair divide, drew closer in the aftermath, love burning brighter against the shadows. And though danger lingered, so did the certainty that neither would face it alone again. The private villa in Malibu stood high on a cliff above the Pacific, its wide glass walls open to the endless ocean and the rare December snow that had dusted Los Angeles before melting into memory. Vincent Rossi had arranged everything within hours of the backstage attack. Private flight back from the venue, discreet medical care for his shoulder graze, this secluded house with staff who asked no questions. Mia had been flown in with her trusted nanny, tucked safely into a sunlit bedroom filled with new books and toys. For the first time in years, Emily Harper woke without the immediate weight of survival pressing on her chest. Yet the weight had only shifted. It now lived inside her, a violent, tearing turmoil that grew with every quiet moment. The attack had stripped away the last illusions. Vincent's world carried real danger, and she had nearly become its target. Poverty's long humiliation still clung to her bones. Thin frame wrapped in borrowed silk robes, stomach unaccustomed to regular meals, sleep fractured by old fears. The villa's luxury only sharpened the contrast. Heated floors against her bare feet, a refrigerator always full, ocean views where once she had stared at cracked staff quarter walls. The unfairness of it all, years of cold wind and empty cupboards suddenly replaced by this, confused and numbed her until dizziness returned in waves. Vincent moved carefully, shoulder bandaged but healing, giving her space while never far. He cooked simple breakfasts himself, eggs, toast, fresh fruit, bringing trays to the sun-drenched terrace where she sat wrapped in blankets despite the mild air. His eyes followed her constantly, love burning so fiercely it seemed to warm the space between them. On the third morning, Emily stood at the terrace railing, watching waves crash far below. Mia played inside with the nanny, laughter drifting through open doors. Vincent approached quietly, 2 mugs of coffee in his good hand. He set one beside her, then stood close, not touching. "How did you sleep?" he asked softly. "Better," she admitted, voice timid. Mia didn't cough once. She turned to him, eyes searching his face. "This place, it's too much. I don't know how to be here." Vincent's jaw tightened. Inner torment flashed, remorse for dragging her into danger, violent conflict between wanting to give her everything and fearing he would only bring more shadows. "You deserve this," he said roughly. "More than this." Emily shook her head, tears rising. "I was counting pennies for medicine last week, sleeping in a room where the heat barely worked. And now," her voice broke, "it doesn't feel real. I'm waiting to wake up." Vincent set his mug down and turned her gently to face him. "It's real." His uninjured hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear. "You're here, safe, with me." The touch ignited something. Emily's breath caught, dizziness returned, but warmer now. She searched his eyes, fair skin flushed, gaze fierce with love and pain. "Why me?" she whispered. "After everything you've seen in your world, why me?" Vincent's heart tore violently, the question he had asked himself 1,000 times. "Because you're everything my world isn't," he said, voice low and raw. "Quiet, strong, kind when no one gave you reason to be. You walked into that gala meant to be mocked and owned the room with nothing but dignity. You protected Mia alone through years I can't bear thinking about." His hand slid to the nape of her neck, fingers trembling slightly. "I fell in love with you the moment I truly saw you, and it hasn't stopped burning since." Emily's tears fell faster. Shock and confusion warred with a surge of feeling she had never known, intense, overwhelming. She who had been invisible for so long, suddenly the center of this powerful man's universe. The contrast crushed her. His strong, warm hand against her thin neck, his tailored shirt open at the collar against her simple robe, the endless ocean view against memories of cold wind rattling thin windows. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling. "Scared this will vanish. Scared of your world. Scared of how much I—" She stopped, unable to finish. Vincent's eyes darkened with understanding. "Say it," he urged gently. Emily swallowed. "Scared of how much I feel for you already." The words broke something open. Vincent pulled her close, careful of his injury, arms wrapping around her thin frame as if she were the most precious thing he had ever held. Emily clung to him, face buried against his chest, tears soaking his shirt. The embrace was desperate, years of restraint and pain combusting at once. He drew back only enough to look at her, foreheads touching. "I'm scared too," he confessed roughly. "Scared I'll fail you. Scared my shadows will touch you again. But I'm more scared of a life without you in it." Then he kissed her. The kiss was not gentle. It was years of longing released, passionate, intense, explosive. Emily responded with equal fire, hands clutching his shirt, body pressing closer, as if to erase every cold, lonely night. Vincent's uninjured arm tightened around her, the other braced against the railing, holding them both steady as waves crashed below. Heat built between them, fierce and consuming, drowning fear and doubt in raw emotion. They broke apart only for breath, foreheads still touching, breathing ragged. Vincent's eyes blazed. "I love you," he said against her lips, completely, irrevocably. Emily's heart tore open fully, shock giving way to overwhelming love, burning just as fiercely. "I love you too," she whispered, voice breaking. "I didn't know I could feel this much." He kissed her again, deeper, lifting her slightly so her feet barely touched the terrace. The world narrowed to sensation, his warmth against her lingering chill, his strength holding her weightless, the ocean roaring approval far below. Nights of cold wind, skipped meals, humiliating powerlessness, all faded against this fire. Later, inside by the fireplace, they sat tangled on a wide sofa, blankets forgotten. Vincent traced gentle patterns on her arm, careful of old bruises from carrying too much for too long. Emily rested her head on his good shoulder, fingers laced with his. "I want to give you everything," he said quietly. "Safety, warmth, a home where Mia never knows want." Emily lifted her head, eyes shining. "I want to stand beside you," she answered, "not behind, as your equal." Vincent's face softened with wonder and love. "You already are." They kissed again, slower now, but no less intense, promises sealed in touch and breath. Outside, the Pacific stretched endless and calm. Inside, passion burned bright and steady, forging something unbreakable from the ashes of old pain. Emily's inner turmoil quieted for the first time in years, not gone, but held gently in Vincent's arms. His remorse and conflict eased too, replaced by fierce determination to become the man worthy of her love. In the quiet villa above the sea, two hearts, once torn by unfair worlds, finally ignited fully into one flame. Spring arrived gently in Boston the following year, melting the last snow from the harbor edges and softening the sharp wind that had once cut through Emily Harper's thin coat. The Seaport penthouse still stood tall, but much had changed within its walls. Vincent Rossi had quietly dismantled the most dangerous parts of his old empire, not with loud declarations, but with careful, steady choices. Rival confrontations faded as he withdrew from contested territories, redirecting resources toward legitimate developments that created jobs instead of fear. The tense street standoffs that once tore at his heart became memories. Remorse still visited him in quiet moments, but it no longer ruled him. Love had given him a new kind of power, one rooted in protection rather than control. Emily's rise in the fashion world continued steadily. She walked major runways in New York and Paris, her natural grace and quiet strength earning praise that no longer surprised her. Contracts grew, but she chose carefully, only work that allowed time with Mia and Vincent. Part of every paycheck went to a foundation she started for single mothers facing domestic hardship, quietly funding medical care, warm housing, and childcare. The memory of her own cold nights, skipped meals, and desperate counting of coins drove her to ensure no one else endured the same unfair silence. Mia, now healthy and bright-eyed, attended a small private school where she painted ocean scenes inspired by the Malibu villa. She called Vincent Vinny without fear, climbing into his lap to show drawings, and he held her with the same fierce tenderness he showed Emily. One soft May evening, Vincent led Emily back to the rooftop where everything had begun. The venue had changed hands, but he had arranged private access. String lights glowed warmly now. No grand gala, no elite crowd, just the harbor view, a simple table with candles, and Mia giggling nearby as the nanny helped her arrange wildflowers. Vincent took Emily's hands, fair skin golden in the sunset, eyes burning with the same passionate love that had never dimmed. "I brought you here," he said quietly, "because this is where I first saw you clearly, where I knew I would love you for the rest of my life." Emily's heart, once torn by poverty's cruelty and fear, now filled with steady warmth. She no longer flinched at luxury. She accepted it as the life they built together, equal partners. "And this is where I learned," she answered softly, "that love doesn't care about where we started, rich or poor, powerful or powerless. It only cares about who we choose to become for each other." Vincent knelt then, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside gleamed a simple ring, white gold with a single diamond that caught the harbor lights. "Marry me, Emily. Let me spend every day proving you and Mia will never know cold or want again. Let me build a life where love is the only power that matters." Tears shone in her eyes, but they were tears of joy now. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. Mia ran over then, throwing her arms around both of them. They held her between them, a family forged not by blood, but by choice, compassion, and unbreakable love. Later that year, they married in a quiet ceremony on the Malibu cliff at sunset, Only close friends, Lena, Marco, Carla, and a few from Emily's foundation. Emily wore a simple ivory gown she had designed herself. Vincent stood tall in a light suit, eyes never leaving her. Mia scattered petals, laughing in the warm breeze. Vincent continued redirecting his wealth toward good: scholarships, housing projects, support for families escaping hardship. The old shadows faded completely. He often said the greatest knowledge he gained was that true power lay in lifting others, not controlling them. The most important lesson was that love crosses every divide: wealth, poverty, past mistakes. Education of the heart, he learned, was the only education that truly changed a man. Emily's foundation grew, helping hundreds. She spoke at events now, voice no longer timid but steady, sharing how knowledge of one's own worth could overcome any unfair beginning. The lesson she carried deepest was that compassion was the truest wealth. Education, formal or lived, could open doors poverty had slammed shut. Their life became one of balance: runway seasons balanced with quiet evenings in Boston, charity work balanced with family dinners, Vincent's strength balanced with Emily's grace. Mia grew surrounded by love that knew no limits of background or bank account. Love, they proved every day, saw no color, no class, no past. It only saw hearts willing to open. And so the maid who once endured cold wind and empty cupboards became the woman who stood beside a redeemed man, building a legacy of kindness. The powerful boss who once commanded fear became the husband and father who commanded only love. In the end, knowledge taught them that dignity was the greatest inheritance. The lesson repeated in their daily choices was that compassion bridged every gap. Education, of the heart, of experience, of choosing better, changed everything. We hope this story has touched you. Remember, knowledge is power. Knowledge changes lives. Knowledge opens doors. Knowledge heals old wounds. And knowledge builds brighter futures. The lesson here is clear. Lesson of resilience. Lesson of redemption. Lesson of unconditional love. Lesson of second chances. And lesson of giving back. Education matters. Education of empathy. Education of courage. Education of forgiveness. Education of generosity, and education of the soul. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the YouTube channel Alex Truths, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear that love and compassion always win. Drop a comment below. Tell us how this story made you feel, or if you've seen similar lessons in real life. We read every heartfelt word and treasure the emotions you share from deep within. Wishing all of you wonderful health, joyful lives, and daily peace. See you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.